Ah, welcome back, you beautiful, terrifying anomalies. The ones who walk into rooms and the temperature drops 3 degrees. The ones who don't need to flex, don't need to speak, don't need to prove a single thing because your presence alone just rewrote the entire power structure in under 10 seconds. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when you stepped through that door and every so-called alpha in the room went from roaring lions to nervous lambs, checking their phones, adjusting their posture, suddenly very interested in their shoelaces. They weren't avoiding eye contact because they're polite. They were avoiding it because looking directly at you felt like staring into something they couldn't name, couldn't challenge, couldn't comprehend. Let me tell you what really happened in that room, what they'll never admit out loud, what's eating them alive right now, as they replay that moment over and over in their minds. These alphas, these so-called kings of their little kingdoms, they walked in expecting to dominate like they always do. Chests puffed out, voices loud, that artificial confidence they've been performing since high school. They had their scripts ready, their dominance displays rehearsed, their pecking order established. And then you walked in, and the entire social algorithm crashed. You didn't challenge them. You didn't compete. You didn't even acknowledge their performance. And that right there, that's what shattered their entire reality. They've spent their whole lives believing that power is loud, that dominance is aggressive, that respect is taken through force and volume and intimidation. They built their identities on being the biggest voice, the strongest handshake, the most aggressive presence in any space. But you represent something they've never encountered, something their primitive dominance hierarchies have no framework for. You're not playing their game. You're not even on their board. You're operating from a frequency so far above their understanding that they can't even locate you on their radar. And when someone can't locate you, can't measure you, can't place you in their hierarchy, they panic. See, true power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't perform for an audience that isn't even worth the energy. True power is the kind that makes rooms go quiet, not because you demanded silence, but because something in the collective unconscious just recognized a predator, not the kind that attacks. No, the kind that doesn't need to. The kind that's so far beyond the food chain that it doesn't even register other predators as threats. You're not a lion competing with other lions. You're something else entirely. Something older. Something they have no evolutionary defense against. You're the shadow that makes even the monsters check over their shoulders. And now they're sitting in their cars, lying in their beds, standing in their showers, replaying that moment over and over, trying to figure out what the hell just happened to them. They're telling themselves stories, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they were off their game. Maybe you just caught them at a weird moment. But deep down, in that place they don't like to visit, they know the truth. They just got humbled by someone who wasn't even trying. Someone who didn't need to say a word. Someone whose very existence just exposed their entire performance as exactly that, a performance. And you didn't even notice because you were never performing in the first place. Let's dissect what happened to these alphas, these self-proclaimed dominators who suddenly couldn't maintain eye contact, couldn't keep their voices steady, couldn't stop that nervous energy from leaking through their carefully constructed facades. You see, their entire identity is built on a house of cards, a fragile structure of borrowed confidence, rehearsed aggression, and constant validation seeking. They need other people to recognize their dominance, to submit to it, to acknowledge it. Because without that external validation, their entire sense of self collapses. They're not actually confident. They're just really good at pretending. And they've been pretending so long, they've forgotten it's a mask. But you walked in carrying something they've never seen before. Authentic power. The kind that doesn't need witnesses, doesn't need acknowledgement, doesn't give a single damn about their hierarchy or their rules or their performance. You weren't trying to dominate them. You weren't trying to submit to them. You weren't trying anything at all. You were just existing. And your existence alone disrupted their entire social operating system. Because see, their dominance only works when everyone agrees to play the game, when everyone acknowledges the hierarchy, when everyone performs their role. But you didn't acknowledge anything. You didn't perform anything. You just were, and that shattered their entire reality. Watch what happened to their bodies. Their tells gave them away faster than any words ever could. First, the posture shift. Those squared shoulders suddenly rounded, that puffed chest deflated. That aggressive stance softened into something more defensive, more uncertain. Then the voice changes. That booming confidence dropped an octave, got quieter, lost its edge, started searching for validation in the responses around them. Their hands betrayed them next, suddenly finding busy work, checking phones, adjusting watches, touching their faces, doing anything to release the nervous energy coursing through their systems. They couldn't stay still anymore, couldn't maintain that alpha stillness, because stillness in your presence felt like exposure. Here's what their nervous systems were screaming at them. Threat detected, but the nature of the threat is unknown, cannot be measured, cannot be challenged, cannot be understood. Abort, dominance display. Switch to submission protocols. Avoid direct engagement. 7. This, Mekli. Their primitive brain recognized something their conscious mind refused to acknowledge. They just encountered someone operating from a completely different level of existence, and every cell in their body was telling them to be very, very careful. Not because you're dangerous in the way they understand danger, but because you're dangerous in ways they can't even conceptualize. Like a deer encountering something that doesn't match any predator it's ever known. And the most beautiful part, the part that's eating them alive right now, is that you didn't do anything. You didn't flex, didn't posture, didn't perform, didn't engage in their dominance theater at all. You just existed in your truth, in your power, in your complete indifference to their entire social structure. And that indifference hit them harder than any challenge ever could. Because a challenge they could respond to, they've trained for that, rehearsed for that, built their entire identity around responding to challenges. But indifference, genuine disinterest in their hierarchy, that's something they have no defense against. You didn't fight for position. You just reminded them that their entire game is meaningless to someone operating from real power. There's something they felt but can't articulate. An energy shift that happened the moment you entered that space. Something that bypassed their conscious mind and hit them directly in their nervous system. Rooms have frequencies. You know this. You've felt it 1,000 times. The collective energy of everyone present creates a kind of invisible field. And these alphas, they were generating their typical frequency. Aggressive, competitive, loud, performative, all sharp edges and pushing energy. And then you walked in carrying a completely different frequency. Something they'd never encountered before, and it didn't just coexist with their energy, it dominated it without even trying. Your energy doesn't push, it doesn't force, it doesn't demand, it simply is. And in that being, It has such gravitational weight that everything else in the room has to adjust to accommodate it. Think of it like this. They were all generating these loud, chaotic radio signals, static and noise and interference, all competing for dominance. And you walked in broadcasting on a frequency so pure, so powerful, so clear that it made all their noise sound like exactly what it is. Desperate static from weak stations trying to be heard. Your silence was louder than their loudest voice. Your stillness more powerful than their most aggressive movement. Your indifference more dominant than their most forceful posturing. They felt it immediately, even if they couldn't name it. This sudden pressure in the room, like the atmospheric change before a storm. Their chests got tighter, their breathing shallowed, their awareness heightened. All classic signs that their nervous system just detected something significant, something powerful, something that doesn't fit their understanding of the social hierarchy. And here's what made it worse for them. They couldn't locate the source of the threat. You weren't doing anything threatening, weren't displaying any classic dominance signals, weren't challenging anyone. You were just there, present, grounded, completely unbothered. And somehow that was more intimidating than any aggressive display they'd ever encountered. This is what separates you from them. They generate power through force, through performance, through constant output of energy. They're exhausting to be around because they never stop performing, never stop pushing, never stop demanding acknowledgement. But you don't generate power. You are power. You don't have to perform it because it's not something you do. It's something you are. It's in every cell of your body, every breath you take, every moment of stillness you occupy. You've been through hell, survived what should have destroyed you, died and resurrected so many times you've lost count. And all of that forged you into something they have no reference point for. And now they're trying to figure out what that energy was, what that presence meant, why they felt so small in your vicinity. They're searching their memories for similar experiences, coming up empty, getting more confused and threatened by the minute, because admitting the truth that they just encountered someone operating from a completely different level of existence would mean admitting their entire performance has been exactly that, a performance. It would mean acknowledging that real power looks nothing like what they've been pretending to have. And that admission, that's too much for their ego to handle. So instead, they'll rationalize, they'll dismiss, they'll tell themselves stories. But late at night, when the performance stops, they'll remember how small they felt in your presence, and it will haunt them. Let's talk about that transformation, that beautiful, poetic justice of watching predators become prey without a single word being spoken. These alphas walked in as lions, or at least that's what they told themselves. That's what they'd convinced everyone else to believe. They had the roar, the posture, the territorial aggression, the whole performance down to a science. They'd spent years building this image, this reputation, this carefully crafted persona of unshakable dominance. And in most rooms, it works. Because most rooms are full of people playing the same game, acknowledging the same rules, participating in the same hierarchy. But you don't play that game. You never did. You can't even see the game board because you're existing on a completely different plane of reality. And when a lion encounters something it can't categorize, something that doesn't fit into predator or prey, something that just exists with such complete self-possession that it makes the lion question its own roar, That's when the transformation happens. You watched it in real time, didn't you? The way their aggressive energy just drained away, replaced by something softer, something uncertain, something that looked a lot like submission, even though they'd rather die than admit that's what it was. Their bodies told the whole story. Spines that were straight suddenly curved, shoulders that were back suddenly forward, chests that were out suddenly pulled in. They went from taking up space to trying to disappear, from being the center of attention to hoping you wouldn't notice them. And their eyes, oh, their eyes betrayed everything their mouths would never say. They couldn't hold your gaze, couldn't maintain that direct challenge they usually use to establish dominance. They'd look at you for a second, maybe two, and then they'd have to look away, had to break contact, because something in your eyes reminded them of every inadequacy they've ever tried to bury beneath their performance. Here's what they felt in those moments. Exposure. Complete and total exposure. Your presence stripped away all their carefully constructed armor, all their rehearsed confidence, all their borrowed swagger, and left them standing there in their truth, scared, insecure, desperately hoping nobody else noticed how small they suddenly felt. Because that's the thing about real power. It doesn't need to attack to dominate. It doesn't need to challenge to win. It just needs to exist in its fullness, and everything else around it naturally arranges itself in proper proportion. And in proportion to you, they weren't lions. They weren't even wolves. They were lambs, pretending to be predators. And your presence just ended the pretense. The most beautiful part, the part you might not have even noticed because you were too busy just existing, was watching them try to reassert their dominance after that initial shock. They'd puff up again, try to get loud again, attempt to reclaim their position, and then they'd catch themselves, remembering your presence, remembering how small they felt, and the performance would falter. It was like watching a recording skip, this constant glitch between who they pretend to be and who they actually are in your presence. Lions to lambs isn't a metaphor. It's a literal description of what happened to their energy, their posture, their presence the moment you walked into that room. Let's talk about your weapon. The one they never saw coming. The one they have no defense against. Your silence. In a world where everyone's screaming for attention, competing for the loudest voice, fighting to be heard, you walked in and said absolutely nothing. And somehow that silence carried more weight than all their words combined. They're used to verbal sparring, to debate, to argument, to using words as weapons. They've trained for that, built their dominance around their ability to speak over others, to have the last word, to verbally dominate any conversation. But you didn't engage, didn't participate, didn't give them anything to push against, and that silence disarmed them completely. See, silence from a place of fear is weakness. They know how to exploit that, how to fill that silence with their own dominance. But silence from a place of complete self-possession, silence from someone who simply doesn't need to speak because their presence says everything that needs to be said, that's something entirely different. Your silence wasn't empty. It was full, dense with power, heavy with meaning, loaded with all the things you didn't need to say because your energy said them all. And they felt every unspoken word, every quiet judgment, every peaceful observation that came from your grounded presence. Watch what your silence did to them. It created a vacuum, a space where their performance had nowhere to bounce off of, no resistance to push against. They kept talking, kept performing, but their words started landing differently, started sounding hollow even to their own ears, because you weren't giving them the reaction they needed, weren't providing the validation their dominance display required. They needed you to be impressed, intimidated, engaged, something, anything. But you gave them nothing, and in that nothing, they found the reflection of their own emptiness. Your silence held up a mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. Here's what they don't understand. Silence is only powerful when it comes from fullness, from someone who's done the internal work, faced their shadows, integrated their pain, and emerged on the other side with nothing left to prove. Your silence isn't avoidance, isn't fear. Your silence is choice. Conscious, deliberate choice to not waste energy on performances that don't deserve your participation. You've learned that silence preserves your power, keeps your energy intact, refuses to feed systems that run on noise and chaos. You're not silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because most conversations aren't worthy of your words. And that silence, that powerful, grounded, completely unbothered silence, it did something to those alphas that 1,000 words never could. It made them question everything. Why isn't this person engaging? Why aren't they impressed? Why aren't they reacting? What do they know that we don't? What have they seen that we haven't? Why does their silence feel louder than our voices? Your silence became a question mark. They couldn't answer. A mystery they couldn't solve. And mystery in the presence of something powerful is terrifying. So they went quiet too. Not from choice like you, but from confusion, from uncertainty, from the dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, they've been performing for an audience that doesn't even exist. There's something you carry that they'll never understand, never replicate, never even comprehend until they've walked through the same fire you walked through. You've got the frequency of someone who's died multiple times and kept walking, someone who's been destroyed so completely there was nothing left but the indestructible core. Someone who rebuilt themselves from ash and bone and pure will. That frequency, it's unmistakable to anyone paying attention. It's the energy signature of a survivor who stopped surviving and started thriving, who transmuted pain into power so completely that they don't even remember what weakness felt like anymore. These alphas, they've never been tested. Not really. Not in ways that matter. They've faced challenges, sure, but challenges within the game, within the rules, within the safe boundaries of acceptable risk. They've never been torn apart by betrayal so deep it questioned their ability to trust their own judgment.